Halli Casser-Jayne Show, talk radio for fine minds, airs Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, and is always available for your listening pleasure at HalliCasser-Jayne.com. And thank you so much for joining me. I am Halli Casser-Jayne. Today on the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, some of the iconic names in women's fiction. Jenna Blum, Pam Jenoff, Sarah McCoy, Kristina McMorris, Alyson Richman, Erika Robuck, and Karen White stop by the show to talk about their latest contribution to literature, Grand Central, original stories of post-war love and reunion, with an introduction by Kristin Hannah, and so much more. But before we begin, a brief message from our sponsors. You are listening to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, talk radio for fine minds. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show is always available online at HalliCasser-Jayne.com. Today, the Halli Casser-Jayne Show is brought to you by Audible.com, a leading provider of spoken audio information and entertainment. Listen to audiobooks whenever and wherever you want. If you want to listen to it, Audible has it. With over 150,000 titles in virtually every genre, you'll find what you're looking for. Get a free audiobook and 30-day trial today by signing up at www.audibletrial.com/The Halli Casser-Jayne Show.
Is someone you love living with frequent pain? Are they spending more time just sitting in a chair or lying in bed or going to the ER more often? Other than taking them to the doctor, you may not know what else to do. Treasure Coast Hospice can help in more ways than you may realize. Even if you don't think your loved one is ready for hospice care, their experts can evaluate your loved one's condition and direct you to the right resources in our community. Call Treasure Coast Hospice to learn more or visit tchospice.org.
We begin Girl Talk with Kristina McMorris, the critically acclaimed author published by Kensington Books, Penguin Group, and HarperCollins, UK. Kristina's work of fiction have garnered more than 20 national literary awards and appeared on the New York Times and USA Today bestseller lists. Inspired by true personal and historical accounts, Kristina's novels include Letters from Home, Bridge of Scarlet Leaves, and most recently, The Pieces We Keep. Kristina has a new book due out in fall, 2015, The Edge of Lost. Prior to her writing career, Kristina worked as a host of weekly TV shows since age 9, including an Emmy Award-winning program. But today, Kristina is here to talk about this very special anthology to which she contributed, Grand Central, original stories of post-war love and reunion, with an introduction by Kristin Hannah. And I want to welcome to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, Kristina. How are you today?
I'm well. Thank you for that amazing introduction.
Well, you did it all, darling. How nice to have you here. So, Kristina,
thank you.
Is it true that you are the guilty party for spearheading this amazing project, Grand Central, Original Stories of Post-War Love and Reunion, with a foreword by Kristin Hannah and getting the 9 authors to wholeheartedly agree on the story concept? Is that true? Is that you?
It is. It is, and I always tell the girls it is such a self-serving project, and that you get to, we got to play way more than we worked, I think, and saw the opportunity really to be able to reach out to really the same audience I think that a lot of us share, but more importantly, come together to do something that we all believe in, that we're passionate about, which is historical fiction, of course, and being able to take true stories and share that with people who usually maybe wouldn't pick up a textbook. And then on the personal side, we just got to work on a project with friends and authors that I think that we all personally admire. So it was just a win-win for everyone.
So you have to tell me this. What did it just pop into your head, this idea of Grand Central? How did this come about in your brain?
It was kind of a half joke. Careful what you say over dinner with Chardonnay. So I had dinner one night with Sarah Gio, who was in town for a book signing event, and of course we know each other because we both live in the Northwest. And that night she was going to be doing her reading, but I got to play as an audience member, and I was sort of half joking, saying, we should do a book together sometime. Wouldn't that be fun? And I'm sure she thought I was joking and said, sure. And then later, as I was procrastinating working on my last book, a new project sounded a lot more fun at the time, and I started emailing all of these amazing friends and authors and saying, are we serious? Could we really do this? And everybody jumped on board in an amazing fashion, and next thing you knew, we had a book on our hands to sell. So it was very exciting and happened very fast.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm glad that it happened, and I think the audience is going to be really glad it happened. If they haven't picked up this book, I personally am going to recommend it, which I don't always do. I loved every story in the book, including the reunion. It's inspired by a true story, isn't it?
It was. I happened across a documentary from the library that I was looking for something else, actually, and it was about women pilots, the WASP, during World War II. And I had personally never heard about them before, and I thought I can't be the only one. And so I started watching this documentary about these women who were incredible female pilots during World War II, and yet they were not considered military, even though they fought for that right. And so even if a tragedy happened, which it often did, and if you had a woman who died while ferrying a plane for various reasons, they were not given benefits. They would take up a collection among the women in order to even get the remains home to their family. And to me, that was heartbreaking. And so that inspired the story that I have in the reunion, which is of two women, and one of them having to face a tragedy in order to move on with her life.
It's a great story. Let's bring into the conversation Miss Jenna Blum.
Yes.
I say that because Jenna is a friend, personal friend. Jenna is the New York Times and internationally #1 best-selling author of novels Those Who Save Us and The Stormchasers. She's one of Oprah's top 30 women writers. The lucky one in this book is the title of Jenna's contribution to Grand Central. And I want to welcome her back to the show. Hiya, Jenna Blum. How are you?
I'm so happy to be back, Halli. Thank you for letting me be a repeat offender on your show.
Never an offender. Never. But goodness gracious, Jenna, another brilliant piece by Jenna Blum. I don't even believe you. Whatever you touch turns to gold. I want you to tell me about the lucky one.
I wish that were true. Oh, my gosh. Thank you so much for saying that. I think every writer wants to hear that. But there's a lot of straw that we produce before anything gets spun into gold. And maybe I should just say I instead of we. I'm not speaking for all you girls, but that's the way it works in this study. Anyway, the lucky one I thought was supposed to be a short story. So for me, it seemed like a no-brainer to contribute to this fabulous project that Kristina came up with. And it was loosely inspired, as they say on TV, by real events. When I was working for the Steven Spielberg Survivors of the Shoah project back in the late 90s, one of my Holocaust survivor subjects was a gentleman who had been a chef in his home country of Czechoslovakia before World War II, and then after the Holocaust, when he emigrated to America, he was fired from his job as a busboy because his concentration camps had to upset the diners in the restaurant. So I always had wanted to write a piece about the ironies of assimilation. I think most people think that after the war, survivors just easily and sort of blithely picked up the pieces when they reached their new countries and started new families and so on. And in many cases, those wonderful things did happen, but it usually came with the price of having lost a lot of people back home. So I really wanted to explore that area and that particular irony. And I also found, as I wrote The Lucky One, that the story became a much deeper story of what it means to be a gentle man in a very brutal world. My main character, Peter, is a gentle soul like Ferdinand the Bull in the children's books who doesn't want a bullfight. He just wants to smell the flowers. And in Peter's case, this sort of saves him throughout the war, but when he gets to America, he's surrounded by the ideas of machismo of the time, which is, you have to just be this real big man and a mocker and a mover and a shaker, and he's always just wanted to live a quiet, productive life, and his personality, he thinks, contributed to the loss of his original family. So it really became a sort of meditation on what the idea of manhood is, especially in times that are almost unimaginably terrible.
Let's talk about this time. The whole book takes place September 1945. One day, that's your starting point at Grand Central Station. All the novellas are, of course, as I said, the same, but the brutality of the war years. What a horrible time. And yet there's something very magical in all of the stories, and certainly in Grand Central Station. And if none of you have ever been to the terminal, it's magic. World War II, the magic of Grand Central. That's kind of, a strange juxtaposition. Can you talk about that just very briefly?
Well, I think you could probably ask Kristina since she spearheaded it and chose the location. But I think that the way I perceive it is World War II was the last war that felt really clear-cut morally. It was good good guys against bad guys. And there was such an enormous cost and such a gigantic toll paid by the good guys. And Grand Central became, at least in my mind, a place where people reconnected after having gone through the incredible maelstrom of that time. And when you reconnect, you come back and you're not always the same as you were. And so a lot of these reunions are fraught with a whole spectrum of different emotions, and that's what makes each story in this anthology so compelling, is each one is a little bit of a different window, a different glimpse into how people's lives were affected by this war.
And I thought personally it was a rejoining of humanity, and what a perfect place to do that as at Grand Central. Pam Jenoff. Pam is the international best-selling author of novels, including The Commandant's Girl, great book. Pam's a graduate of George Washington University, Cambridge, and Penn Law. She formerly worked as a diplomat for the State Department in Poland, at the Pentagon, and as an attorney. She lives outside Philadelphia with a husband and 3 children, where, in addition to writing, she teaches law. And she has a new novel out next month, The Winter Guest. Let me formally welcome you to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. Hi, Pam. How are you today?
I'm fine. Thanks for having us. Thrilled to be here.
Thank you for coming. Pam, Strand of Pearls, your contribution to Grand Central. Your story is based on your Bubby Faggy and her real-life journey from China to America. It's fascinating. Talk to us a little bit about it.
It is. So my story is about Ella, and she's a young woman who has grown up not in the war in Europe, but in Shanghai's Jewish community. And she makes the very brave decision in her teens to come to America by herself and try and find her father in hopes of reuniting her family. And when she arrives in America, she finds things very different from what she expected. And it's based on my own grandmother's story. My grandmother was raised in China and also made her way here to try and find her father. So there's a lot of parallels.
It's a great story, and that Strand of Pearls. Oh, my gosh. Full of wisdom of pearls, this story, if you read through it. And that's why I loved it. I'm going to bring Sarah McCoy in. She's the author of the New York Times USA Today, an international bestseller, The Baker's Daughter, a 2012
Hi.
choice. Hi, sweetie. Let me go on with you. So they all know all of these accolades that you've been awarded. A 2012 Goodreads Choice Award Best Historical Fiction nominee. She's also the author of The Time It Showed in Puerto Rico and the forthcoming novel from Crown in May 2015, The Mapmaker's Children. Her work has been featured in Real Simple and on Huffington Post, among other publications. She calls Virginia home. She and her Army physician husband and their dog Gilbert are living in El Paso, Texas. I love it. Welcome, Sarah McCoy.
Hi, Halli. I know. I jumped in too soon there. I know. Let her give your resume, Sarah. Back it up. Don't be so excited. Bring it down a notch. But I'm very happy to be here.
And it's nice to have you here. Your story is The Branch of Hazel. It's a story of a chance meeting and how serendipity can affect one's life. Tell us about The Branch of Hazel.
The Branch of Hazel. It is a story of a woman who has just come over from Germany, but she is there. She's come on Luxembourg papers so she could get through. And it's a story about identity and the lengths we go through to both hide our past and to renew ourselves in the present. Can that be accomplished? Is it right for that to be accomplished? So she has come over, and she is a Lebensborn mother. And not very many readers know about the Lebensborn program, and that was one of the aspects that compelled me to write this short story, is that in my novel, the baker's daughter is named Elsie, and her sister is Hazel. And Hazel is in the Lebensborn program, and it was a Nazi program to bring in the purest of pure and best pedigreed women of Germany and have them basically be broodmares. I hate to use that term because it's so pejorative, but that's what they were to the Nazi officers, to create then this absolute perfect race of master Aryans. This was Hitler's initiative. So these women were brought into the program, and they were lauded. I mean, they were given gold stars, and they were almost superstar celebrities during that tiny, tiny window of time. And just as quickly as they rose in their fame, they were kicked out. As soon as the regime fell, they were considered filthy. They were prostitutes, even though they weren't when they were brought in. That's not what they came in under, but that's what they left under. They left with that smear across their name. They just weren't good anymore. They were dirtied and sullen, and their families rejected them. I mean, it was really a monstrous. I mean, the entire Nazi regime was monstrous. Everything about it, including what Hitler did to his own people and this generation of very strong women. And so this woman comes over, and she was part of that program, and she can't go home because her family won't have her, and she's tainted over there, so she's left and come to the only place that she has a refuge that will take her in, which is a cousin. So she's come over to go to this cousin. And I don't want to give too much away, but it's dealing with that masking who you are and trying to find that new beginning. And moreover, I was really excavating that idea of forgiveness. How much can we forgive?
And you did it quite well. So, Sarah, in your show questionnaire, you say you're an open book and I can ask you anything. So I'm going to ask you ready? Do you write?
Yes, I am.
Do you write in the nude?
It's just now I got a full body hot flash that you asked me that question because I'm like, oh my God, she's in my office. Now, I'm not in the nude, don't worry. But Erika Robuck and I joke that when we do Skypes that we are, and I just said this to her before we started taping the show, that, it's business on top, party on the bottom, which is that's all anyone sees is from when you Skype is from the top up. But I was laughing, saying that even today, though, I didn't even adhere to that very well because I am just 10 kinds of a mess. And I'm honest, it's so hot in El Paso right now that sometimes I won't go into detail about what I work right this now because I might frighten readers off and they would never pick up my book again. They say, oh my God, what is she doing over there when she creates these stories? But it's so hot in El Paso right now that you could sit all day in basically a bathing suit or a tank top or your underwear or whatever, and you're still sweating. So no, I don't.
But not in the nude. Not in the nude. Alyson Richman is the nationally best-selling author of The Lost Wife, as well as The Mask Carver's Son, The Rhythm of Memory, The Last Van Gogh. Her books have been published in over 15 languages and have received worldwide acclaim. Alyson lives in New York with her husband and children, and in Grand Central, original stories of post-war love and reunion. Alyson has written a poignant story of new beginnings and hope called Going Home. Tell us about Going Home, Alyson.
Well, Going Home began with an idea that was actually given to me by my husband, who is a violinist. He had thought, there was always a musician who played music while you passed through Grand Central on a journey of some kind. And he always sort of said, I wonder, what the backstory of a musician could be who's playing in Grand Central. And so I created the character of Gregory, who is a violinist who has fled Poland before World War II, actually during the pogroms, and who comes to, create a new life in America. And one day as he's playing in Grand Central, he sees a young, beautiful girl pass him by who reminds him of the women he remembered in his childhood from the old country. And he's sure that she's from Europe from somewhere, and he doesn't know her story, but he desperately wants to serenade her and to get her attention. So every day during her commute, he plays a different song, hoping that one day she'll turn around. And he alternates what he plays from the different countries from around the world, hoping that something will connect with her. So in Going Home, you learn the backstory of how he came to America, but also the backstory of this young woman, Liesl, who comes from Czechoslovakia, who was a dancer and who was sponsored by a man named Karl Lemma, who had been one of the founding partners for Universal Pictures. And he actually had come from a small village in Germany and sponsored many people, many beautiful women in the film industry and dancers, and someone that she knows from her dance company in Czechoslovakia connects her with Karl Lemma and brings her to America. And you learn about her family life in Czechoslovakia and how she too is forming a new artistic life under the backdrop of New York City.
It's a great story, and it's interesting to me. There's a lot of metaphor in this book, throughout this book, and I love the metaphors and the juxtapositions. And this one is one of the strong ones. You're also, by the way, have a new novel coming out in the fall, The Garden of Letters, and that centers around a cellist and the Italian resistance.
Exactly. Thank you for pointing that out. I didn't want to be too heavy-handed and start,
No. We'll get all
pitching my new book.
Something coming out. I like hawking books for everybody.
I always feel uncomfortable doing that, but one of the reasons why I wanted to write about a violinist is because I was at the same time writing this story, writing about a cellist, and I was really, creating language of how you talk about music and what the lyricism of music is and how music has its own texture and color. And so it just seemed to synchronize with what I was working on a larger scale with The Garden of Letters.
And it also, as I said, the metaphor there, because the horrible times, what all of these characters in the book are coming from, and then have the beauty of the music. And it's the string that pulled, your string of pearls was one of them, and the string of it brings everybody together. It's fascinating. Erika Robuck, self-published. Hi, Erika. And her first novel was called Receive Me Falling. Her novel, Hemingway's Girl, was a Target Emerging Author pick and has sold in 2 foreign markets to date. Call Me Zelda made the Southern Independent Booksellers bestseller list. Fallen Beauty was released on March 4th. She's a forthcoming novel, The House of Hawthorne, that will be published in May 2015. I want to welcome her officially to the show. Hi, how are you, Erika? Nice to have you here.
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Really great. Having you guys here is a pistol. I'll walk alone. I'll walk alone.
Bang.
Bang, bang. I'll walk alone is your contribution to Grand Central. And I know you write and review historical fiction on your blog, Muse, and you're also a member of the Historical Novel Society. But I want you to talk to me first about I'll Walk Alone in this regard, in the power of historical fiction.
I think that my love affair with historical fiction really started because of where I've grown up. I live in Annapolis, Maryland, and everywhere you go, it feels like you're walking back in time. The buildings are the same, the old Georgian homes. I have a strange fascination with cemeteries, which makes me a little odd, but I just love them. I think there's something beautiful and tragic about them. And I've always been past obsessed, and, my Irish grandmother used to tell me stories and give me books that were far too mature for my years, but I loved reading the stories that she would give me, and they always was drawn to the past. So I always joke with my husband that I like living in the past and bringing up the past, but I do. I just feel like I love when you're reading the aspect of being transported to another time or place. And I'm particularly interested in how the past is connected to the present and how they're all woven together. So that's my historical fascination. And with I'll Walk Alone, Alyson and I had met at Grand Central, and we took a walk together and planned where our characters would go and where they would stand. And the story really rose out of the clocks in one aspect. Again, this idea of time and the passage of time, and how relevant even something 100 years ago is to today, that human emotion never changes. And then I started thinking a lot about my grandmother, who loved to travel, but whose story was a little sad. For personal reasons, for her living children, I can't get into it too much, but let's just say I'll Walk Alone is I rewrote her story as she may have wanted it.
I like that, as she may have wanted it. We're going to talk about that in a bit. Each story takes a different approach to the subject matter and expresses such a multitude, the book expresses such a multitude of viewpoints. In a large sense, that's the backstory to the book, isn't it? It's messages, but they're incredibly subtle because of what's behind all of this. Talk to me.
Well, I think, when I was walking through Grand Central and you see so many different kinds of people coming and going, and some are wearing this beautiful expression of expectation, others look very nervous, others look completely blank. They do this every day, so they're not even thinking about this place they're walking through. And just the idea of the travelers and all of the different lives in one place together, especially a place like Grand Central, which is so beautiful, and the ceiling makes you lift your eye. It almost is like a cathedral. So for people who don't notice their passage through it, they're just as interesting to me as the ones who are standing there with their mouths open, staring at the ceiling. So putting all of that together, but then allowing each of the stories to thread to each other is just, I think, shows that greater theme of human connection.
I love it. Karen White. Let me tell everybody a little bit about Karen. She's the New York Times and USA Today best-selling author of 18 novels. She currently writes, she refers to as grit lit, otherwise known as Southern women's fiction, and has also expanded her horizons of late into writing a best-selling mystery series called The Tragged Reet, set in Charleston, South Carolina, my favorite town. Her most recent book, A Long Time Gone, was released in June, and Karen spent her youth in London, England, and is a graduate of the American School in London and holds a BS in management from Tulane University. She currently lives near Atlanta, Georgia, with her husband, where it's also probably very hot today, and 2 children, and a spoiled Havanese dog, Quincy, who sometimes, I understand, makes appearances in her books. Hi, Karen. Let's talk.
Hi, Halli.
The harvest season is your story in Grand Central. Share with us the premise of that tale.
It's a coming home story. I think, again, like Erika, I'm a huge history buff. I always have been. I get it from my father, from my earliest memories. He was taking us to, various battlefields, Gettysburg or Valley Forge or whatever. And I guess being a writer, as much as I'm fascinated about the, the historic scope of some of these events in history, what's more fascinating to me is the personal stories behind, who were these soldiers. They all came from families. They all have parents. They all have, brothers, sisters, wives, lovers. And to me, that is the heart of every story. And I wanted to tell a story about a soldier coming home where, he's been through hell. He's seen things he never expected to see. He's from a small cotton farm in the Mississippi Delta, probably never expected to go overseas, much less fight. But he's done that, and that in his heart, his dreams are just about going home and finding his home exactly as he left it. That, as one of the characters says in the story, you can't sense time no matter how hard you try. And so, of course, he comes home 4 years later, and nothing is the same. And he has to reconcile himself with that fact and find a way to move forward.
I have to ask you this. Novellas, long form, mystery, grit-lit, are the challenges different in each form? And is it the story that drives you, or is it the form that drives you? Or is it a little bit of both while you're working?
You know what? To me, it's always the story. And even before the story, it's the character, because it's the characters who drive the stories for me. So it doesn't really matter what format it's, however many words you want me to write the story in, I'll find a way to do it. That, to me, is the most important. And to be honest, this novella, I guess is what we're calling it, my little part in the anthology, was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to write. My books are generally between 130 and 150,000 words. So this was a challenge. This was, girls, how long was our stories were supposed to be, 10,000 words?
10,000.
Yeah, that was the biggest challenge for me, but it was such a great writing exercise to really get to the heart of the story. And, I'm working on another full-length novel at the moment, and I really find myself using what I learned writing that novella, to really cut to the chase, to really get down to the meat of the story and just cleanse it a little bit. And I think that it's been a wonderful exercise. I think it's really helped my writing.
Yeah, we're going to get into the meat of the story of these lovely women, best-selling authors, in a minute, but we're at the half hour, so we've got to take our break. So ladies and everyone in the audience, it's time for that break. So sit back, relax, have a cool sip of something, or maybe something warm. We'll be back after these brief messages from our sponsors with our illustrious guests, some of the writers who contributed their brilliance to Grand Central Original Stories of Postwar Love and Reunion. And you are listening to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, talk radio for fine minds, available 24/7 online at HalliCasser-Jayne.com. Hello, this is Halli Casser-Jayne, host of the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, talk radio for fine minds. Join me Saturday evenings at 2200 hours, that's 9 p.m. London time, on my favorite radio station, Radio Catalonia. See you there. We are back on the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, talk radio for fine minds. Today I'm talking with some of the iconic names in women's fiction. Jenna Blum, Pam Jenoff, Sarah McCoy, Kristina McMorris, Alyson Richman, Erika Robuck, and Karen White, all of them stopping by to talk about their latest contribution to literature, Grand Central Original Stories of Postwar Love and Reunion, with a foreword from our good friend Kristin Hannah. So I want to welcome you all back. Hi, guys.
Hello.
You all there?
Hi, Halli.
Hi,
Hi. Okay. So, girls, can we talk? All right.
Cool. Absolutely.
All right, let's talk. So all of you have been successful because you're deeply talented writers, but There are a lot of extraordinary, talented authors out there, and I want to know what it is why you think you've been the one who's broken through the slush pile. Kristina, let's start with you. What do you think?
Oh, goodness. You're going to start with me? Come on.
I am.
Lead the way, leader.
Oh, goodness. I know you're all brainstorming your own answers right now. So, let's see. Why am I so awesome? No, I don't. Let me regroup. Gosh, you know what? I think that what's interesting to me is, and I think I could probably speak on behalf of all these women because I've read their work and I'm in awe of every single one of them. The fact that we all write from our heart, I don't think that any of us started on this path, this crazy journey in the literary industry because we were trying to come up with something commercial in it. We think it was cool and it would sell, and that's what was hot right now. Clearly, a lot of us have written World War II, and I think many of us at a time when that was not the hot thing to write. So I know personally I wrote my first novel, Letters from Home, as a book that I felt the need to write because it was a personal story. It was inspired by my grandparents' courtship letters from World War II. And so when I set out to write it, I thought, you know what, I'll try to sell it, and if it doesn't sell, I'm going to make copies of Kinko's and give it to the kids as a Christmas gift. And then they would know that their mom wrote a book, and I had something to say about that generation and that I admire so much. So I think that's really, I would venture to guess, for all of us, we came from the right place.
I like that answer. Jenna, what's writing for you? I know you. I know you have a multitude of interests. I know you storm chase, cooking. You've recently become engaged. You teach.
I have.
So where does Jenna Blum, writer, fit into the equation? And are you a writer first, last, what, which, who?
That's a great question. I played this game once in a bar when I was in grad school. For creative writing, we had to describe ourselves in 3 adjectives, and my first adjective was writer. I've been a writer since I was 4. My dad also was a career writer. He wrote for CBS and NBC and ABC in the network's heyday, and so I grew up with the sound of his typewriter as the soundtrack for all of my earliest memories, and ever since I was a child, I wanted to be a writer like my dad. So I was going to say the other things you described are hobbies. I'm not really sure I would call being engaged a hobby. I take being a fiancé very seriously. But otherwise, all of the other hats that I wear, like including my fascinators and my obsession with fashion, all of those things, except for my personal relationships, very much take a backseat to my writing. I consider myself a writer before anything else. So it's my primary identity.
So any man who's going to spend the rest of his life with you has to know writing first?
Well, were you sitting in on my therapy session today? We actually spend a fair amount of time in my household talking about apportioning love and art. My fiancé, Jim Reed, is a very accomplished and renowned extreme weather photographer, and when we first started dating, we were talking about what happens if each of you is used to being the diva in your creative profession, and we said, well, we're going to have to figure out some way to sing a duet. But both of us are very, very, very immersed in our careers, have been sort of pushing the career rock in a creative profession. It often feels like a sort of a Sisyphean thing where you're pushing a rock up a hill every day, and you have to keep at it and keep at it and keep at it. And so both of us have been doing that for several decades. And so bringing love into that equation has been this really interesting experiment in, sort of throwing our elbows out and making room for both love and the careers that we're so passionate about.
Yeah, I love that answer. And boy, can I relate. Everybody else relate to that? I'll bet.
Yes, definitely.
Right? Yep. Absolutely. Pam, do you write what you know or write what you hope, or is it a mix?
I think it's a mix. For me, my writing comes out of my years for the State Department in Poland. I was there at this incredible moment of time right when communism ended, and there were all of these issues from the Holocaust that still had to be dealt with. I was working on them professionally. The survivors became like grandparents to me. And so when I came back from Europe, so moved and changed by those experiences, that was really the turning point for me in terms of finding my center as a writer. So I write what I know, but it's also the kind of bridges I want to build and the kind of complexities that I want to show in my stories, I do think represent a very strong element of hope.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the fascination that I have with all of you as writers, because I think all of your work has that one component to it, which is as hard as some of the stories are, there's always hope. I love that about you guys. That's why I like you. Not everybody in the world shares that ability to always have that bit of hope in them. Sarah, is it sexist to ask if women writers are different from their male counterparts and how they are perceived by their public? And even if it is, I'm going to ask you anyway.
Wow, talk about loaded pistol. I got the shotgun question there. No.
Bang, bang.
It's a good no. It's an excellent question, actually. Are we different from our male counterparts? Of course, we're living in a day and age when we want to raise a fist as feminists and say we are equal to our male counterparts, and yet, that's the hope. Is it true? I think we're still working towards that end, and I think it's important for us as women writers to remember and to be cautioned not to become, I'm going to use a term I know I'm probably going to get in trouble for this, but my husband throws around the term, that he is in favor of me being a feminist. He is not in favor of me being a feminazi. Since we're in World War II, I hope that can be used, to show something that we don't want to go towards, where it's almost an extreme case of man-hating. And I think that's important for us to keep in mind as feminists, that, I love my husband. I think he's wonderful and brilliant. I love men. I have 2 younger brothers. They are everything to me. I champion everything they do. So it's not about not liking men. It's about us being on equal footing and respecting each other. And I think that is the way I like to define and to look at the writing world with men and women. Can men write from a female perspective? Absolutely. Look at Chris Bojalian. He writes from a female perspective and does it wonderfully. Can a woman write from a male perspective? I believe absolutely so. I actually love writing from the male perspective. I have so much fun writing from that perspective because it forces you to actually try within yourself to put aside your own politics and beliefs and everything. You put it aside, and you have to put on a different identity and write from that heart, not just the mind and the psychology, but from that heart place. And that makes you really view the world and the people in it, male, female, all quite differently in your writing. I found that in The Baker's Daughter when I wrote from a Nazi male perspective. I had to suddenly have a heart for him even though I despised his actions. I had to have a heart for the man and see what was going on there. And I find that really interesting. So male, female, I think it is important that we are on equal footing. I think that as an industry on that level, we're not there yet. I think there is the penchant for men and their writing to be editorially lauded more than women, but I think we're coming around. I think also we battle that chick lit and that romance writer thing, and but we're starting to have good fiction of that. So it's
let's
balancing.
Take that out. I stopped you for a reason. I'm trying to stop you for a reason because I want to take that out for a second. When we were getting the show together, we all talked, and one of the suggested titles by me, mostly because it's a keyword and it picks up on Google, was romance writers. And that idea was shot down in a second. Talk about bang, bang. What is the moniker, why has the moniker romance writer gotten such a bad rap? And what's wrong with being labeled a romance writer? Because let me make this point. It's interesting to me that in film, a writer of romance, like Nancy Meyers, Something's Gotta Give, or the late Nora Ephron, Sleepless in Seattle, Your Romance, we all love to death, they're hailed as the great writers of all time in romance. But if a woman writes romance, she's somehow relegated to something less than a literary icon. Alyson, I'm going to throw that one out to you. What's your take on that?
Well, I think we need to be careful that like I was coming to say in that, and I'm glad you stopped me and we're going to focus on this, but I think we now in this day and age have good, so what I was saying, good chick lit, good romance is being written and coming out. And a lot of what, at least when I was in MFA school, what my teachers called bodice-ripping romance novel is fading away. I think our readers are becoming smarter. They're becoming more in tune with how we write and how a good narrative arc is put together. And because of that, writers have stepped up and they've started writing these amazing, quote, romance
Well, I think it's, not to interject, but I think it's really difficult to I'm sorry, this is Alyson Richman speaking. Okay. I think romance is such a broad term for so many different things. I mean, I certainly feel that love is such a universal theme in good literature. And is love romance? Yes, part of romance is part of love, but it doesn't mean that we're writing a romance story solely about the romantic part of love. We hope to be carving out stories that have many different shades of love in a lifetime. And I think it's just a more universal approach of telling sort of the journey that we all have as women in our life. So I don't think anyone in this group here is going to write a story that is purely about the romantic aspect of love. We're writing, I think, about broader terms. And so, but I do, going back to what Sarah McCoy was just talking about, bodice rippers still do exist, and that is a genre that people read, and it's valid for many different readers that they find an escape in that. But I don't think anyone here is actually writing that type of story.
Okay, that's fair. I think, but I do think it's curious as to how that word romance plays out in different genres. But let me put it another way, which is to say, I think it's kind of interesting how we have to label anything and not take each individual work for what it specifically is. And, that's in everything in life today, radio show hosts, we get categorized, too, a certain ways. It's weird. Let me move on for a minute to the next thing. And I want to say to Erika this. Talk about what compels you, whether it's your love of history, your love of storytelling. But talk to me about the play of words, word playing. Isn't that what writers also do, is play with words? Yes?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I think I'll speak for myself, but I can tell from reading the fiction of everyone in this group that words and language are very important. There's sentences in all of the novels and the short stories of the people in this collection that make you stop and stare at the wall. I was laughing with one of my book blogger friends about that the other day. I love books where I have to stop and stare at the wall because a sentence is so beautiful and so universal and touches something deeply. And that's why I'm honored to be in the company of the people that wrote this book. Translating it into my own fiction, I think that's why I'm obsessed with writers from the past. It's what I've been writing about for the last 3 or 4 years. I want to understand how their personal lives influence their work, and I want to understand how their work influences the culture, and all of that comes from the words and the telling of the stories.
Yeah. I want to now introduce another sexist question. You guys mind? I'm not apologizing. Do you hear me? I'm not. I want to say, all of you have huge lives, your wives, your fiancés, your moms, you have teaching careers, outside interests, right? Writing is a solitary exercise, incredibly time-consuming, and emotionally sometimes takes over the being, right? How hard is it? We want to apologize for asking this question of women. I would ask the same thing of men, except that I know in reality in most homes where women do it all and men do some of it. Sorry, that's a lot of homes. But how is that for you, Karen? I mean, talk to me about that just a little bit, real quick, because I'm watching that clock, and I got lots more to talk to you guys about.
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked me that question because, that's something that certainly goes through my head all the time. Yes, women are the great multitaskers, and I know I have a husband who, when my children were little, traveled all the time when I was working. And I don't know, and I think this goes back to the question you asked Christine, why are we so successful? I know it's because I never said I didn't have the time to do it. I decided that this is what I was going to do. I was going to write a book. I had no plans on selling it, and I wrote most of my first books in my Volvo SUV while my kids were, at the football field or, at the barn. Does my husband notice or appreciate any of it? Probably not, but when we got married, it was a traditional marriage. I was a stay-at-home mom, and I did everything. And then when I sort of picked up on this hobby, and this hobby became a successful career, I continued to be the person who does everything at home. And, and I guess because I come from a traditional background, I don't know, but that works for us. And, yes, it's the hardest thing in the world. If I did not have an understanding husband, especially now when my career has kind of taken over every aspect of our lives, I don't think I could continue to do this. And having lots of fans who are just wonderful, I always make sure that I forward all my best fan mail to my husband to say, see what our sacrifices mean to other people. But again, if I didn't think this was the most rewarding career I could ever possibly hope for, I would not do it because it is really, really, really hard to be a mom, to be a wife, to be, I have 2 elderly parents. My mother has Alzheimer's. Dealing with that, dealing with all these other things in life, and having to, right now I'm on 2 deadlines. I'm working 7 days a week, every day, all day, when I'm not doing anything else, when I'm not doing Pilates. And it's very, very hard. But again, I think if I did not have this creative outlet, I would go a little crazy. So it's just sort of a necessary thing.
Halli, can I jump in? Can I say something real fast to Karen's point? This is Sarah McCoy, by the way. Karen also, to what she was saying, we had this very discussion together when we were in New York City for the launch of Grand Central, and I think she reminded me that it's so important to have women that we admire, like this group that has come together, like Karen, who sat with me at the bar as I teared up in front of her and bared my soul about these exact issues that she and you have brought up in that question. Like, how does a woman do it all? Like, we are to be the wife, we are to be the mother, we are to be the best friend, the Sex in the City, everyone's girlfriend, or to be the sister and the daughter and the neighbor and the husband gets to go to work. I said, my husband goes to work, he comes home, he asks what's for dinner. It's a very simple world there. And I feel myself, and I told Karen, I feel like you're coming apart some days because you give so much to your writing. What's left for Sarah McCoy, the person? What's left for Karen White, the woman? Just me as a soul. And Karen was so wonderful, and I still think about that conversation, Karen, and it gave me so much breath and hope and inspiration to just even knowing that someone out there, another writer who has been through this and is a successful woman, is doing it and can give me advice. So again, it goes to this group and
not a
the
completely
magic.
Sane person, yeah. Although I can't say that I'm always sane all the time.
Yeah, and that's what she told me, too. It's okay to be insane a little. And I said, thank God, because I am losing it.
Well, isn't it sad that we live in a world where you have to get permission to feel insane, to be allowed to insanity when we all feel it, career work and everything else that we do. I got to move on. Jenna, you had encouraged success with those who save us. What kind of pressure does that huge success have on a writer? Are you afraid you'll ever match that?
I wish you had asked me the question about romance fiction instead, because that seems a little easier to answer. Thank you. Yeah, Those Who Save Us was not an overnight success. It was a debut novel, which means it was like the family and friends novel because that was who bought it in hardcover. And it became a successful novel over the course of the next 4 years because I was promoting it to book clubs, which means I basically sat in the homes of readers and drank all their wine and ate all their cake and talked about my characters for 3 hours with them, which was such a great honor and joy. And the readers passed the book from hand to hand to hand to hand and created the success of Those Who Save Us by themselves. The readers were the ones who lofted that book up onto the New York Times list, and I thought that was terrific because I think that's how it should be. The readers should be the force that keeps a book alive. So readers, buy Grand Central. The way that I felt writing The Stormchasers, my sophomore novel, can maybe best be summed up by an apocryphal story about Amy Tan. Somebody asked her at a reading after she had written The Joy Luck Club, how does it feel to have written your best book first? Oh. And apparently she grounded her so much in her sleep after she got that question that she had to have extensive dental replacement because she was under so much strain. And she said she actually had a novel 1.5 that was between her first book and her second book that never saw the light of day. And I can relate to that. At home in my condo in Boston, in my attic, I have a novel 1.5 that never saw the light of day. And I think if I had not been under contract to write a second book and had had an agent who is French and really fierce and said to me, you are under the contract, so get off to Facebook and write your second book, I probably would have still been lollygagging about it. But what happened was Stormchasers, my second novel, was actually sold before it was written. It was sold on a synopsis and some sample pages, which is very rare with fiction. And I was on the Facebook every day and doing a lot of online shopping until my contract was almost up. And then I went away to a motel in rural Minnesota where the book is set, and I stayed there until the first draft was written, so a couple of months, and then came back and presented it to my publisher. So there was a sort of tremendous pressure after the first book was successful, which is like, the problem the supermodel has, like, everybody says I'm so beautiful, nobody takes me seriously, but, you really, I think the sophomore novel is hard for a lot of people, and in my case, I sort of had to trick myself into writing it, and I'm very glad to be working on a third book now and to have had Kristina invite me to participate in Grand Central along the way, because that's my book like 2.5 or like 2.10. So I've sort of kept the wheels going that way.
I get that. I really do. And I think all these answers that each one of you is giving probably is universal for most of you, if not all of you. So, forgive me for not being able to go back and forth to each of you to answer the same question. Pam, you're an extraordinarily accomplished woman and now an accomplished writer. And where is writing on your list of priorities, first of all? And do you think you were born a writer or did you become a writer? Which one is it?
I think it was Jenna who said, was always one of those kids who was scribbling the stories and showing them to anyone who would look. And for me, it was always going to be novels. I must tell you briefly that the turning point for me was 9/11. I had always wanted to be a novelist, and I never got started. I became a practicing attorney 1 week before 9/11 happened, to the day. And when it happened, I had an epiphany that I called, Dear God, I don't want to die at the law firm. And what I meant by that was that, I really wanted to be a novelist, and I had to get started. So I would say I was always a novelist, but it was really took a moment of, dear Lord, what do I want to get me in the chair and writing in earnest.
Fascinating. I'm going to pay you all a compliment, but Kristina, I'm going to ask you the question. One of the things about Grand Central that I loved is that even while tackling such a difficult topic as the Holocaust and its effects on the lives of so many in your stories, one thing each of you managed to do, in my opinion, was to be heart-wrenching but never maudlin, to be poignant but never sad. And I want to ask if any of you have figured out that that's part of the formula for a best-selling historical novel, Kristina.
Gosh, I think if we all knew the formula, we'd pay top dollars for it, and we'd be fighting over it like a bouquet between bridesmaids. I think that I would venture to guess, because again, I've read all these women's amazing work, and I would venture to guess that we are all, again, kind of to mention again what I said earlier, when that is that we're coming from a place that's real, and like Karen said, where it comes from the characters, and you write about the truth of human nature, and whether, I think that's something maybe we're all fascinated by as well. I know I am, the fact that I've been asked many times at book clubs, I'm sure they have too, how do you write these characters from the 1940s and feel like you're being accurate, aside from a lot of research that we all do and interviews and reading letters and all those things you can only do to a certain point. And I think that what I found, and why I love their story so much as well, is that I think we're all writing from a place of being human. And it really doesn't matter then what time you're in, whether it's the 20s or the 80s or, present day, we all have those the similar things that we all care about, that we're afraid of losing, the forgiveness we need to give each other and to ourselves. And I think that's what comes through our stories. And
it really does. Listen to this. 10 women, 10 creative minds, a woman editor, Cindy Huang is her name? Huang? Is that how you pronounce it?
Mm-hmm. Oh, Huang. It's how she pronounces it.
Okay, Cindy Huang. And they say women can't work together? Your thoughts, ladies? What do you think? I'll start with Alyson. Women can work together, yes?
We're getting all these challenging questions. I love everyone that I worked with, and what's interesting is I think the women whose stories I love the most and whose writing I love the most, even though I had never met them in person, when I finally got the chance, and everyone who's on this phone call now, when we met in Grand Central, was like we had known each other for years. I mean, Karen and and I love the same, department store. And Kristina and I have a mutual love of cookies and, my garden with Sarah McCoy, and Erika and I have all these wonderful memories of being in different. We've actually met before, but there's a sort of a similarity, I think, between us and our soul. I mean, I think all of us do feel that we were born in another time, and we have a mutual respect for each other, and it's been wonderful. And as you touched upon before, I mean, writers do live a solitary life. I mean, I don't even get internet connection really on where I live. Like, I can't even use a cell phone where I live. So I'm really disconnected from a lot of things, but I just love getting emails from all my fellow authors and, on this project and feeling connected to people that without sort of social media, I don't know if I would have ever even had a chance to meet and work on this wonderful, wonderful project together.
I love it. In closing, I'm going to ask you all, you're writers. I want one adjective for a writer. I might think that would be hard. But Karen, give me an adjective for Erika.
Oh, wow. Besides wonderful and talented, I'm trying to be creative here, and you've got me. Why did I have to go first? I've read two of her books and loved them. I would have to say, her writing is lyrical, but I think for her personally, warm. How's that?
Oh,
okay.
Thank you.
Erika, Alyson.
A poet.
Alyson, Pam.
Sincere.
Pam, Sarah.
Sarah is. I can't find it. It's a verb. It's not an adjective. I say Sarah glamoured me because she's so you just pour out your soul to her. But I don't have the adjective for that.
Okay.
I love it.
I love it.
No, I lost track.
Like a vampire.
Pam, you did Sarah, or Alyson, you just did Pam, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
All right, Pam, it's your turn for Sarah.
Oh, that was me. I was saying the
okay,
I'm Pam.
All right,
me.
Sarah, Kristina.
The easy one for me is Ladybug, but no one else is going to know what that means. So, we call each other Ladybug as a nickname joke. I'm Ladybug 1, she's Ladybug 2. But I would say Mensa Brilliant.
Okay.
She is, because she has got a brain like I would give everything to have. She's amazing.
Kristina,
should be studied by science.
Yes, she should.
Jenna. Yes. Kristina, Jenna.
Oh, gosh. 100 come to mind, but I think somebody may have, hopefully, I'm not sure if somebody used genuine before, but she's one of the most real, genuine people and it shines right through her work.
Thank you.
Jenna, Karen.
Oh, my gosh. Admirable. I admire Karen so much, and Karen has become like my personal superwoman inspiration ever since I met her.
Oh, thank you.
Isn't that
You're
nice?
welcome.
So, here we go, guys. The book, Grand Central, Original Stories of Postwar Love and Reunion, with an introduction by Kristen Hanna by way of the Berkeley Publishing Group. The authors, Jenna Blum, Pam Jenoff, Sarah McCoy, Kristina McMorris, Alyson Richman, Erika Robuck, and Karen White. 7 warm, wonderful, glamoured, sincere, ladybug, brilliant, genuine, real, and admirable ladies. Thanks so much for being on the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. You've been great. Before I go, I want to remind everyone that podcasts of current and past shows are always available to listen to free on iTunes under the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show is also available for download via Spreaker.com, Stitcher.com, BlogTalkRadio.com, and a host of other venues. Google the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, and you will find us. Of course, podcasts of our shows, both past and present, are always posted for your listening pleasure at HalliCasser-Jayne.com, which I hope you'll visit often for the latest information on our upcoming segments. Oh, and while you're at HalliCasser-Jayne.com, don't forget to visit my blog to read my latest musings. I'll be back next week, same time, 3 p.m. Eastern, for another edition of the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, Talk Radio for Fine Minds, brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download at www.audibletrial.com/The Halli Casser-Jayne Show. Audible.com features over 100,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Stay in touch, won't you? Remember, that's HalliCasserJayne.com. Discover us on Facebook at Halli Casser-Jayne and on Twitter at HalliCJ. I love to hear from you. So, till we meet again, this is Halli Casser-Jayne. It's a wrap.